Okay, welcome back. Another video here. We're continuing on. We're going to come to chapter 10 in a moment. Just want to point out a couple of things at the end of chapter 11 that are important. And let's grab a color here to differentiate. So, as we can see in the story, the court case and the danger to Atticus's family and the children is sort of building up in the background. Court case is coming up. Remember, I mentioned before there's kind of a three-part structure to the novel where you have the Bildungsroman, that is the coming of age, the growing up story genre of both Jem and Scout. Jem's further along the path than Scout, obviously being 4 years older than her, but Scout being the narrator, she's who the focus and the emphasis is on her growing up, her coming of age story. But then, as the novel moves toward the middle section, you actually start to get more of this court drama, and Atticus becomes the focus. And then in the third section, after the courtroom drama, we go back to the sort of gothic and coming of age, growing up story elements. But in this discussion between Uncle Jack and Atticus, Atticus is kind of criticizing Uncle Jack's way of teaching Scout, kind of hiding real reality and the real dangers of the situation. And the point was about language, her not knowing kind of some terms that are being used in the adult world. However, as Scout goes away, she is eavesdropping and listening in on this conversation. Oh, what's Uncle Jack going to say to my dad? And they have kind of this adult conversation that she's overhearing. So I just want to point out an important phrase here and a little bit of the context. So before I'm through, I intend to jar the jury a bit, says Atticus. I think we'll have a reasonable chance on appeal, though. I really can't tell at this stage, Jack. You know, I'd hope to get through life without a case of this kind, but John Taylor pointed at me and said, "You're it." All right, so what does this mean? Atticus wants an appeal. That means Atticus expects to lose. Okay, but try again. So when you appeal, it means you've lost, but you have legal grounds to ask for a retrial. In this case, Atticus assumes he expects to lose. Well, why? Because of racism. He knows that the default decision by the jury is probably going to be racist. But he kind of trusts in the legal system to do an appeal. So Atticus, again, remember on his wall, he had this Code of Alabama, like framed and on the wall, and he didn't really have much else in his office, actually. And it was called an unsullied Code of Alabama. It was clean, it was pristine, clear. So Atticus has this trust in the legal system and in the process. He believes that's where equality comes. So racism is not greater than the equality provided by the legal system. Okay? That's how you're going to get real equality, according to Atticus. But is that so? Now, interestingly, Judge Taylor pointed at him and said, You're it. That is, you're the one who has to take this case. So Judge Taylor, why did he choose Atticus? He chose Atticus because he knew Atticus is the one that has the best chance of winning the case, which means Judge Taylor is against racism. He wants to change the society too. He picks the best man for the job. And Uncle Jack says, "Let this cup pass from you, eh?" What's that? Well, this is an allusion, a reference to Jesus Christ. And Jesus, just the night before he was going to be betrayed, so before he was arrested and then led to a crucifixion, he made this exact statement. Let this cup pass from me. He prayed. Okay, that was a prayer of Jesus. And it was a prayer to, in a sense, avoid horrible suffering, if possible. He says, Father, he's praying to God the Father. He says, Father, let this cup pass from me if it were possible. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. So what does this do, the fact that this is being applied to Atticus? Atticus becomes a kind of Christ figure. What does that mean? A Christ figure? It's like a savior figure. You know, Jesus's identity and reason for suffering was to save humanity, whoever would believe in him, because he dies for the sins of the whole world, offers himself as a sacrifice, a savior. So Atticus is kind of being related to a kind of Christ figure in this allusion. Now, how does Atticus respond? Right, he says, but do you think I could face my children otherwise? Why did he take the case? Okay, it involves integrity and morality, or moral integrity. We could just put those two together. Atticus sees them as connected. So if he turned down the case, said, nah, I don't want to take that case, it's going to involve suffering, it's going to involve pain, maybe for my family, maybe this danger, give the case to someone else. Well, he wouldn't be upholding what he believes is the equality that the law gives to every human being. Neither would he be a good representative to his children, who he's trying to teach these moral lessons, moral principles. Okay, and we're going to especially see after the court case, does Atticus's moral system work? Did it accomplish anything? Is he the hero? Is he the savior figure? Or do we need a different kind of hero? So we're going to see that's going to come out very clearly in the next chapter. So Harper Lee is masterfully setting up the next chapter by this discussion right at the end of chapter 9, with Atticus as a Christ figure, a savior figure, a hero figure, with the danger element. Now, there's an interesting phrase that's going to come up here in a moment, which we'll catch in this paragraph. Right, but do you think I could face my children otherwise? You know what's going to happen as well as I do, Jack. And I hope and pray I can get Jem and Scout through it without bitterness, and most of all, without catching Maycomb's usual disease. Maycomb's usual disease. What's that? Well, this usual disease, okay, that's a very important phrase. This is racism, prejudice. It's the disease that infects everyone. Okay, it's infectious. It's contagious. Why? Because it's directly connected to social codes, like we learned at the beginning, social codes and laws. It's embedded in the legal system and in Jim Crow cultural racism. So he doesn't want them to catch Maycomb's usual disease. It's catching, it's infectious, it's contagious, like COVID-19. Okay. So he wants them not to become bitter. He says, you know what's going to happen as well as I do, Jack. What's that? Well, he expects to lose, right? He expects that the jury is going to be racist. So he wants to overcome that with the appeal, but he also wants his children not to become bitter and disillusioned about the legal system and about the society. Okay. Another key phrase is used here. Why reasonable people go stark raving mad when anything involving a Negro comes up is something I don't pretend to understand. I just hope that Gem and Scout come to me for their answers instead of listening to the town. I hope that they trust me enough. Okay, what's this stark raving mad? Well, we talked about madness before as a Gothic motif, a Gothic theme, an element. It comes up all the time. Mental insanity, madness. Well, in this case, the madness is actually the same as Maycomb's usual disease. Here, racism, okay, is portrayed as a kind of madness, a kind of insanity. People lose their minds and don't think clearly when it involves racism. And that's called Maycomb's usual disease. So Atticus is aware of that. People are not thinking straight. Therefore, it's very dangerous because it's all based in emotions. And then he actually notices that he knew all along that Scout was listening. And here he catches her. Jean Louise, my scalp jumped. I stuck my head around the corner. Sir, go to bed. I scurried to my room and went to bed. Uncle Jack was a prince of a fellow, not to let me down. But I never figured out how Atticus knew I was listening, and it was not until many years later that I realized he wanted me to hear every word he said. So actually, Atticus was using this opportunity to teach her a lesson, as he knew she was eavesdropping on their conversation. So he's purposely telling her, look, she doesn't really know what an appeal is. She doesn't understand all this legal language. She's just a kid. But she understands, I don't want you to become bitter. I don't want you to catch this disease. I don't want you to go crazy about this whole situation. So keep this language in mind about madness and about disease, because there's going to be a very important symbolic incident in the very next chapter involving madness and disease. Okay, so Harper Lee is kind of foreshadowing here. Okay, there's clear foreshadowing, kind of hinting at what's coming next about this disease and madness motif. Okay, so keep those in mind as we come to chapter 10 in the next video.